Welcome back. So if you guys haven't seen our previous video where we essentially talk about the worst pool value in Honkai Star Rail history, please check that out first, because the train of thought as well as the process for developing the worst pool value based on their time is gonna be the same. But now we're gonna do the reverse, which is gonna be the best pool value, right? The most valuable pools weighted on the time of release, since y'all love the worst of all times, Easy Farm by Serra of the Lake, right? So for Serra of the Lake, we do have the best pool value of today, which is going to be Hyacinth. Best pool value in history, Runmei. Best pool value of version 1, Runmei. Best pool value of version 2, Robin and Firefly. Best pool value of version 3 with Hyacinth as well as Anexa, right? So that's gonna be that. Once again, I'll just go through like the community comments a little bit, and then I'll just give my 2 cents towards the end of the video. So there's gonna be no Tribbie for the best pool value in version 3. It's kind of crazy. It's E0, not E1, and there it is. Okay, that's gonna be an ad. Where is Castoris? I feel like she's better than Anexa, but that may be just my opinion. I would think that be Aventurine over Firefly. Hyacinth only if you have Cyrene TBH. If not, Tribbie has a higher pool value. Darning not being here because it's free. I mean, okay, I think that's gonna be self-explanatory, so it's the... Oh my god, but I'm gonna come back next year and see Hyacinth getting a Link Shot treatment. Fire Fraud Fly being the best version 2 pick over Sunday. And there it is. Can you explain why Firefly over Sunday? We all know she needs a vertical investment to be able to keep up. Firefly is an interesting pick to say the least. While yeah, she's basically the strongest of version 2 for how is phased out, by the way. For how little required, Firefly is also the DPS that fell off the quickest. Like, she basically disappeared as soon as version 3 started. You spell Acron. Actually, I'm kind of surprised Serra didn't pick Acron. That's actually really surprising, because we are talking about E0 Firefly, right? And Serra has like, she has been a E0 Acron simp for like 20 billion years, and E0 Jiaozhou, so that's pretty surprising. Slop Fly over Sunday is crazy. Runmei lasted for so long, even today is still relevant. Hyacinth, I especially agree with the light code. Without it, she still have a good free player option. This list, I agree with. E0 S0 Firefly, and the performance dropped so hard from 2 to 3. I think the punishment for not getting on items is as severe as the case of Cyrene. This is literally just lying for fun, right? So we're really gonna talk about it. Firefly was not a valuable pool. Boot Hill, Acheron, and even Sparkle have all aged better, and Daria just coming out briefly. Give her flowers is temporary. I like how nobody questioned Runmei. She is literally the best thing in happening in version 1 and still relevant to this day, being a generic buffer. Firefly over Sunday is certainly a choice. So I think most people's sentiments about this is where is Sunday? Where is Sunday? Little bit said I didn't get to see Serra of the Lake's response as to where is Sunday. Maybe Serra can type it over here in the chat later. But that is gonna be the comments over here. Let's take a look at the retweets, which is gonna be a little bit lesser, because I don't think this post has been aged quite as long. Meet Miss Wheelchair. Surely she gives generic buffs at E0 S0. 30% max HP by 600. Insane damage for sustain. 19k. Oh my god, her light code is so broken. Less amp than E0 S0 DHPD for an attack skill in DPS. Increased damage taken by all enemies by 18%. They call her 007. 0 skill points, 0 damage outside of Mimo's sprite team. 7 people baited into pulling her light cone or pulling her because of the comfort merchant. She's best in stuff for HP skillers. She's the first to replace for HP DPS outside of Castoris. Shows that sustainers runs without Hyacinth. HP support but doesn't have this in the base kit. Needs to get shielded by this to have value. Future won't be consumed. So our first retweet is literally gonna be a Hyacinth Slender. Very good. Very nice. I need you to delete this. The 2-core sustainless and that is really impressive. 2-core sustainless and skill issue. God, whole fans are miserable. Very good for the Wheelchair Slender. Rage bait of that level does not work on me. Hyacinth, Anexa, Firefly. Glorp. Firefly and Anexa. God sin, don't look to your right. That's an ugly castle. Oh. People falling for the bait is so. I know it's a rage bait. Oh my god, dude. I swear, Serra can literally say anything. Okay, not even Serra. Anybody can literally say any opinion about any gacha game. If that opinion gets enough traffic, it'll be rage bait. I swear, like, no matter how you want to spin a tier list, right? The moment it gets any sort of like a mainstream media traffic and people were to see it, it is bound to be called as rage bait. It doesn't matter like who you are, what game, what type of content, it will always rage bait. So I don't really think it's gonna be that big of a deal. Only Bobbin, everyone here as well. I'm gonna talk about Bobbin a little bit better because we did talk it's easier, right? This is easy, right? Best pool video of version 3. Girl, where is Cyrene? Robin and Anexa. Beautiful ladies and gentlemen. And there's the fraud Castellana. This is probably the best rage bait I've ever seen in this social app. Can someone explain how the f is Hyacinth good at increasing max HP? Low-key links can... Why, bro? I don't have her, but whenever I use her in events or game modes or whatever, she seems mid at best. Anexa, SOS. My E0 S1 height is basically useless now, even though she has 220 speed. DPS will never have more pool value than a support. Get Anexa and Firefly out. Anexa's team are just making him look like a fraud because why isn't Tribbie here? Shit, fly and chop Nexa. If you laugh, you go to hell. Never seen a character more overrated than Anexa. Pool value for version 2 being Bobbin and Sunday. Who's next to Godbin? Firefly over aggro on facial is a choice. Oh my god. Game knows game. Yo, W coded chat, right? Game knows game. This is 10 times worse than the other list. The only correct one is run made. The rest is a whole lot of bullshit. A Firefly. I'm crying. Firefly on Anexa. Yo, Jack, can we recreate this emote? Yo, Cole. Alright, and there it is. A Firefly and Anexa. Firefly. Facial got robbed. Like, bro. Game knows game, chat. Game knows game. Facial got robbed once again. Half-baked break slave. They got kicked out of her own team by a free unit over D. This is backup players out of count, so I'm just gonna ignore. Firefly sneak. My god, realistically, no DPS ever is objectively a valuable pool. Yes, this includes casters that are mono remembers team, but especially not a non-crit scaling one. High roar, low scaling. I say that as a E2 S1 Firefly main, and there is Polnia and Firefly and Lugar done support Mamamita. Aparte, Boot Hill, Rapazon, Memorides, Fire Flop. So TLDR, he is Firefly. Big set, big set, big set, big set, big set, big set. Okay, big set times 10. Very, very good. The greatest. Yo, who is that, guys? Yo, who is that? Bro, this guy is an insane take. The greatest unit of all time. Yo, who could that be? Holy, bro. Yo, someone give this guy a VIP. He is absolutely right, by the way. He is absolutely right. Oh my goodness, the greatest unit of all time, if I can say so myself. The Huan Erasure. Another backup player out. If I say the best pool value of version 3 is Cyrene, now what, right? So, I think we are seeing now the people getting angry. I think the most, I think the biggest source of like contention, aside from the Hyacinth Slender that posts over there, it is basically whether or not Firefly deserves to be here, especially over Sunday, right? So let's take a look into this. Alright, let's take a look into this list over here. We're gonna zoom in right now as the HSRS. Alright, best pool value of today in history will come in a little bit later. I think this is pretty much undisputed though. Alright, version 1, you really had no other units that was your Harmony unit. There has never been a Harmony unit since version 1 was launched. Maybe if you want to say like Kafka as a sub DPS / support for DOT before DOT was a thing, maybe. But even then, if you were to pull for Kafka, you would still have ran Rame for a very long time before Hyacinth was released, right? So I think Rame is a super easy, super chill. As of right now, I think her value is basically like a side grade. Like she will get replaced if you have someone better, right? Like for example, you can run Runway with Castris, but if you have Tribbie, you replace Runway. You can run Runway with Finon, but if you have Savidra, you replace Runway. You can run Runway with Maide to a certain extent, but once again, if you have Tribbie, you replace Runway. So this is sort of like I I made this video like really long ago. It's like the Runmei fantasy. I think I made like a couple months back, where it is a little bit of a curse of being too much of a generalist, where the next generalist or more niche might potentially replace you. One thing about Runmei is that in MrPokke Shadows, at least, I think she will never be homeless, especially a sustainless Runmei in MrPokke Shadows. So I think that is at least really good. But she is sort of like this she is basically your backup chick that you never ever ask out. But if you forgot to ask out your main chick, you can ask your backup chick, and then you basically have to go out and have a nice night at the end of the day, right? So that is where I would say she's standing right now. She's never gonna be homeless. She is like kind of like a second home as an insurance, and you can't really go wrong with that for almost a lot of different teams. Whether or not you have their best slot is not gonna be as important, especially if you don't really care about like the optimal highest performance. And I would say for a like, let's just say right, my free-to-play Bob account. My account does not in front of me on my free-to-play account. Do I regret not having Runmei? Frankly speaking, not really. Because if I'm not gonna be using Break, will I struggle more without having Runmei in MrPokke? I would say, yep, definitely. But if my goal is not really to get that high score, at least for the MrPokke, and because I still have the team for the Herta as well as a Remembrance flagship, my free-to-play account just don't really see a value for Runmei. For me, right? Then going into version 4, whether or not my free account is going to be using Runmei, it will depend on what that version 4 unit is going to be. So if that version 4 unit is not going to give me as much value as, let's just say, like the free Runmei, because she's literally free, I have saved my tokens, I could technically save my version 4 pools just to get a free Runmei. It will purely be dependent on what that is going to be coming out in the future. But as a vacuum within version 1, she is definitely going to be pretty much the best value. So I don't really think there's going to be too much of there. And now we can basically go into the best pool value of version 2. Bobbin and Firefly. Okay. I think for me, like I mentioned in the worst pool value, the same thing is gonna be said for the best pool value, right? It is not just your usage, or rather your use today, your use back when they launched, as well as the opportunity cost of you putting those units. Like, what are you sacrificing over, right? So these three are like the three conditions that I would say like weighted towards the time of release, right? Okay, best pool value of version 2 for Bobbin specifically, right? I think this is pretty straightforward, but that being said, if you still want to see her kind of pop off more than she's gonna be used, especially if you're talking about the caliber with the current version and in the future, I think Bobbin's vertical investments are like really important, right? I know this entire list is gonna be based on E0, but I think out of all these units over here, Bobbin's E1 and maybe even the E2 is gonna see the highest value over here. But that's kind of like the good thing, Bobbin, is that if you do wanna, let's just say you want to pull for an E0, right? If you pull for an E0 Bobbin, she was really good, right? We have a lot of energy, you have your follow-up teams, you can run her in the sustainless. For every single sustainless clear, you basically just use Bobbin, because we didn't have this thing called RMC. We had no such thing as RMC. So every single crit DPS in version 2, you default just use Bobbin, 100% action for the advance, gets the 100% out on the ultimate, and you just clear everything, right? Then now going to version 3, her value is definitely gonna be lower. I mean, like, no shit. But if you still want to cook her, like for example, Face Out, right? If you are still going to be using Face Out, I think that if you were going to be using Bobbin, you are definitely not going to be too disappointed. I'm not too sure how comfortable she's going to be able to be if you want to specifically take her out into, let's just say, for example, you want her with D Herta, right? A D Herta with a next up Bobbin instead of Tribbie. You want to run her with, like, let's just say, like, any other attack. Okay, for example, Saber, right? Saber is technically going to be using Bobbin, right? If you want to run her with, like, I don't think you can use Bobbin with Archer, because the skill point is a little bit scuffed and she's not going to be able to hit enough. But generally, it is still not too bad. My main thing with like Bobbin's value, it is like if version 4 were to release, like, okay, not even if, they will definitely release another generalist support, right? It was Runmei for V1, Bobbin, or rather, yeah, Bobbin for V2, Tribbie for V3. Now, whatever that version 4 generalist is going to be, I think that will basically help you decide if you think Bobbin is going to be kind of worth in terms of value, at least back in when you see her in version 2, right? So, for example, if my free-to-play account, back then, I had a choice of either pulling Tribbie plus Bobbin, or if I went for E1 Tribbie. This is my personal experience running my free-to-play account, I ultimately went for the E1 Tribbie over Barbin because it's the exact same 2 costs, right? I decided to forsake Barbin for my second team, despite the fact that at the end of the day, my free-to-play account will need 2 teams. Right, I would definitely need 2 teams for all the end content HSR, but I still went for E1 Tribbie because I believe that this also kind of ties back to the Rame Fantasy, where if I were to lock in for this one guy, eventually going forward into version 4, I might see a very similar situation happen again, and I wouldn't have to over-diversify my teams by that much. Because as a free-to-play player, I can't afford to. Right, I can't afford to play every single new team comes out. That's why I completely skipped Finon. I completely skipped the Serra for Nexa. I completely skipped out on Super Break, which is gonna be for Dahlia. So the only real team that my free-to-play account even cooked up in version 3 was basically Remembrance Flagship, and then half-ass, half-fuck the Tribbie as well as the use with Herda as well as Nexa. Both of them easier as well, right? So I will take this same concept going forward in the future. If you are somebody that's not bound by this restriction of pools, because you don't really care about whether you want to invest that version's flagship, I think Barbin back in version 2 definitely serve a value, and if you really want to see how that's going to be cooking out in version 3, there really isn't any other unit that come close to what she's going to be doing. Maybe... there really isn't, right? So that is pretty much going to be Barbin, and then we can talk about Firefly. Okay, so this was basically, I think, Serra's second or first hottest take for this entire table. It's either between Firefly or it's either between Anexa. Both of them in DPS, right? Firefly being the best pool value of version 2. Okay, before we can I first get what is Serra's rationale for picking Firefly? Because Serra didn't really mention explicitly what made her say it. Right? Because Serra didn't really reply as much for this particular post. Firefly for all of version 2 was the casual god. And now she is back. Okay, so the rationale for Firefly being past pool value for version 2 is that she was a casual god. And then in 3.8 with Dahlia, she is going to be back, right? So there's the rationale for why Firefly is going to be best pool value. I can't really disagree because Firefly is the casual god. The most owned, most used unit team comp to this day, up until recently getting overthrown by Remembrance Flagship, has been Firefly. Rame is the single most owned support in the entire HSR, and Firefly is single most used DPS in like majority of HSR, even going to version 3. Whether or not Firefly was gonna help you zero cycle, whether or not she's gonna be able to help you get the low cost, high speed clears, is kind of irrelevant because she can still clear the content for you, especially as a casual. Okay, but one very, very important that Serra kind of brought up. Casual god, right? Casual god. It kind of ties back into the Lingsha thing as well. Because casuals ain't gonna be giving a damn about sustainers. That is sort of like an undisputed fact, right? And generally speaking, it also kind of ties back to why I think Rabba was like more worthless compared to Lingsha. Because a lot of casuals would have problems running Gallagher in that kind of setup. And Lingsha for that period of time would be able to help them from that period, right? So in the same logic, if we're going to be applying to casual god as Firefly, I can see why that is going to be the case, because for essentially like the entire year, ever since she was launched, she always had a home. And there's a reason why Hoyo made her our girlfriend, right? Like in Forest, or rather in Penacony, everywhere, every week, every end game, she basically always had this one home that she can call herself not homeless. Be it in like Memory of Chaos, even in pure version, even though she's not going to be that great, you could still 勉强 kill, right? You can still low-key get the barely 30k, force your way through, especially now that you're going to be adding on with, let's just say like a Lingsha support. She's going to help you a lot when it comes to pure vision. And let's just say if Firefly really couldn't help you clear pure vision, there are a lot of other ways with your free units they can use to take with that counting as well, right? But I think this ultimately boils down to like whether or not you're going to be catering this list for people that want to play this game casually, or whether or not you're going to be catering this list to people that really care about like the most efficient use of their pools. So by that regard, Firefly's lifespan, from what I see, is always going to be bound by the curse of a DPS. And the curse of a DPS is, if you want to play this DPS, you kind of just have to keep giving them that +1 or +2 cost over the course of 1 year. So a very good example is, for example, like your Akron and Fei Xiao, if you want to let them keep up with that version 3, you either give them more islands for themselves, or you want to go for, like, let's just say, like, you give them the E2 DHPD, you want to give them car to kind of make them continue on, right? Same thing is going to be with Firefly. You are going to have to log in for the Dahlia. The thing with this Firefly option for casuals, I think it's a little bit of a conundrum, because casuals hate putting for islands. And Firefly's islands, just like Bobbin, it is so good for a team for E1 and E2. So if we are gonna be talking about, like, for a casual god, I think for a casual god that is also allergic to putting for islands, they might just end up dumping Firefly from a casual perspective. I think that's also kind of the reason why a lot of casuals, they tend to put for a lot of DPS, because they cannot sit tight with, like, dedicating themselves into one team. So if I were to picture this list for casuals, I wouldn't really put in DPS units, not because the DPS themselves that they're bad, because she is really good, and she has a lot of very good options for herself, for her team, the islands, but because exactly we want to cater this for, like, casuals, right? Assuming that it's going to be a casual god, there will be a lot of difficulties for them to get them there in the first place, because they hate islands. So on the flip side, if I were to, let's just say, put in a support, if let's just say I would put in a Sunday, if I were to put in a Sunday for this particular slot in version 2, then from a perspective of a casual, if let's just say they wanted to change their mind, right? Because they're casuals, they don't really care about chasing islands, chasing costs, they wanted to try all these different things. If I were to put Sunday over there, they have a little bit more leeway to try to make use of bro at least more frequently, right? And I think a lot of casuals, at the same time, they also hate Cyrene because you're so restrictive, right? Whereas I think casuals generally, they don't really care that much about, like, niche team comps. They don't really care about DOT, don't really care about, like, Super Break. They want a thing that can, like, keep changing. Like, that's what casuals do, right? They don't want to go for all in. They want to, like, change the versions over time so that they can experience all these different teams as a casual. Is it efficient? Probably not, right? You really shouldn't be putting out so many different DPS teams, which is why, like, there will never be the same line of thinking between a casual that doesn't really spend money and a free-to-play that knows what is the more efficient way to go about it, right? So because of that, I would say Sunday would be my personal pick over here, because casuals will probably not put items. Casuals will probably skip Cyrene because Doom posted to shit and she's tied to End Forest. And casuals can essentially have more freedom to take this Sunday potentially into other team comps in version 4. Now, whether or not Sunday is going to work in version 4, that's completely, like, nobody knows. But I have more confidence in casuals having value off Sunday than out of having for Firefly, right? So that is going to be my 2 cents on this over here. I think this one honestly can be up to interpretations for a lot of different ways you want to see it, because Firefly is the most used team since her launch, and now with Dahlia, she's going to be very good. But on the flip side, I think a lot of people that actually do use Firefly, they are struggling a lot, right? A lot of actual Firefly teams, if they are going to be running them with, like, no vertical cost and they don't want to sustain us, they are having a lot of bad experiences with Firefly, which is why a lot of people don't agree with Firefly, because, like, why is she so bad? Why is Firefly, despite being so popular, she's such a bad unit? Because they don't really want to go ahead and play Firefly, right? So it is like I mentioned, it's like a conundrum that doesn't really get fixed. Are you catering towards casuals that want to play different teams, or are you catering towards people that actually, you know what, you want to play Firefly and make her actually really, really good, right? So that's my 2 cents as a Hazel expert, and now we can finally move on into the final segment, which is going to be the best pool value of version 3. Higher scene as well as a next up. Assuming this is easier, right? Assuming this is easier, we are going to be looking at higher scene as well as a next up over here. I would say the higher scene option, like, as of right now, her competition is not that big, because version 3 didn't really see a lot of other sustains as well as supports, because for the most part, it's basically niche things. I think version 3 is, like, a lot more niche. You have your different options as to whether or not you want to lock in. Less general aside from Tribbie, right? If you wanted to play Phynon or Anexa or Archer, maybe you get Serra, maybe you don't, right? If you want to play DOT, maybe you get Hyacinth, maybe you don't. But for your sustain option, DHPD is already free, alright? And I think a lot of casuals, they would definitely struggle on their end without a higher seed, because her sustain is just going to be that much more comfortable. Even at E0 S0, you also have the subject that's going to be the baby Mimi Cyrene Lycon. So I would say that she's definitely going to be able to do a job very well. And for the price of 1 cost to keep your team having the comfort of playing through your style end content because you're sick and tired of using Luocha, Ventrin, Fujian, whatever it's going to be, I think Hyacinth is still going to be up there, right? If you want to take her out from the Remembrance, right, you want to run her with, let's say My Day, right? Technically, if you want to run My Day with a Gallagher, bro can still work with a Gallagher. But like, you're definitely also going to be feeling that little bit more of a discomfort. And even if you want to run, let's just say like in the Sunday boss for Hyacinth, the Yiga can just get one shot. He's coming! So yeah, imagine if your like sustain is not going to be built properly and your team dies. Hyacinth's value for that particular slot to keep your team alive, I'm not talking about like niche situations like, I don't know, energy regeneration, attack bar, right? As long as they can do their job, that would be, in my opinion, the easiest way to see if they can get that pool value. And generally speaking, also a little bit more of a similar train of thought with Firefly is your Remembrance flagship is also super casual god. I think Remembrance flagship is pretty much a casual god version of version 3 instead of version 2. Almost everybody pull for casuals because, well, surprised, you know what? Global passive. Like, straight up, right? We have global passive, we have the lore built around casuals, we have the entire flagship built around casuals with the Evernight, with the Hyacinth, with the Cyrene, everything else. So a lot of casuals just at a service level, they probably would have went for the casual god team of version 3, and that team is pretty much gonna be running Hyacinth. Now, there are also situations where you run sustainers, right? You want to run sustainers Evernight with the Tribbie, with the RMC, but if you want to take RMC as a replacement for sustainers runs, eventually RMC is going to change out. So that is going to depend on version 4. I don't know if RMC is going to stay or it's going to go, but as of right now, I know that if I want to run RMC with my Evernight, they are going to be popping off very, very hard with Tribbie, without Tribbie, super nice with casuals, without casuals. But the moment RMC goes away, and you kind of need that person to come back into the slot again, I don't really know how casuals can actually use the argument for running sustainers, because the exact same argument was used for Lingsha. Right? The reason why a lot of people say that Lingsha is actually not that bad is because casuals don't concern themselves with sustainers clears. So the same Hyacinth Slender can also be applied to them, right? Most casuals probably wouldn't care for sustainers clears. And if you are going to be running one of the most popular teams in HSR, which is, at least in this point, Remembrance flagship, Hyacinth is pretty much going to be them, right? But of course, on the flip side, you can always argue that there's always the niche, you want to run the sustainers, all that kind of stuff. I think you can beat those camps that don't use her. It is not going to break or break your account, but her value, because there's really just no other close substitutes, and especially for Hyacinth, because for Lingsha, you could say there's a Gallagher. I don't have a 4-star Hyacinth, man. I have not seen a 4-star since Mose, and the entire Enforced patch, there really is just no other close alternatives for casuals that still want to run the popular team without the 5-star premium unit, and that's going to be Hyacinth, right? So, for all those reasons combined, I think Hyacinth is also definitely going to be there, at least more so than all the other things. Now, for Anexa in this point over here, right? I think he is nice, especially in the ability to imply your weakness. So, in A-Box Shadows, I think bro is not going to be too homeless, but I'm a little bit concerned as to whether or not he can keep the value going forward all the way. But then again, just like Saber being the worst in version 3, best of version 3 is also dependent on what's coming in version 4. So you can't really tell. So all of these, the only thing we can see right now is from what we can see as of this very moment. Alright, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but one good thing about Anexa is that he does use quite a lot of skill points. He does abuse of Servidra. Right? So to really like pivot Anexa into version 4, I wouldn't think it's like completely impossible, since it just so happens that Anexa support, or rather like the DPS, is kind of similar to Archer in a sense, where as long as you can use your skill point spams, your skill spams, it might actually see a little bit more of a prospective future from that regard over there, right? But the same reasons for Anexa, I think in terms of best value, I don't really know what's like an alternative besides Anexa. So like by process of elimination kind of thing, right? So if I were to say Casterus, who would to say Casterus won't end up like Firefly? And low-key Casterus already has the combination that's gonna be your Evernight, right? Evernight sustainers clears, low-key they're already starting to catch up to Casterus without Evernight, right? Especially without Evernight. On the flip side, if you want to say like Cyrene, the fundamental use of Cyrene with Kratos hair, it is gonna be undeniable. But the same argument for whether or not Cyrene can scale into version 4, that will also depend on like the casual concept of do you want to still keep on playing that version 3 team with Cyrene. So that is gonna be a little bit up to debate as well. I think for this last off for version 3, right? No one else really comes close to Hyacinth. So personally, I will kind of just X out Anaxa, because at the end of the day, he's kind of a DPS. They will always be subjected to the same things. They are going to be subject to any DPS form, which is you're going to be putting for their vertical cost investments in the next version. So if I just have a single unit of being Hyacinth, I'm personally okay with that. Then Anaxa, not going to be as close. And I can just kind of leave this list as Runmei, Babin, Sunday, Hyacinth. Let me know what you guys think as to if there's going to be a closer value of comparison over here. Because in the future for version 3, just like Saber, it is very, very arbitrary, right? And if I had to kill either Babin or Sunday, personally, I would have went Sunday. Alright, in hindsight, I would have went Sunday, right? Because I can actually still use Sunday for quite a lot instead of Babin. So for only a single unit, it will be Runmei, Sunday, Hyacinth. Now, before I move on to the best unit of all time, I kind of want to talk about this unit in particular, which is Tribbie. Tribbie is in a very, very interesting spot because I don't know what's going to happen to Tribbie in version 4. I know what already happened to Babin in version 3. E0 Tribbie and E1 Tribbie is just definitively that big of a difference. It really just is. There's a reason why she is like the most important item one in the entire game, to the point where I will literally skip out another unit just to get an E1 on my free-to-play account, right? But I also know casuals don't want to give a flying fuck for islands. So it is a little bit unfortunate that Tribbie as a unit at E0, it is getting increasingly difficult to compete with the change in meta, which is moving to a single target, as well as the potential upcoming version 4 generalist, as well as the upcoming version 4 niche supports. If you do see yourself getting, let's just say, a E1 Tribbie, I think E1 Tribbie can be compared to this over here. It's a little bit similar to Runmei. She probably will no longer be your best in slot in version 4 or version 5. Maybe they're going to be having better. They'll definitely be something better. But you can always run that E1 Tribbie as a little bit like a backup. It's not going to be the best clear, but it will probably get a job done as long as you can give her a home in any of these team comps that is not going to be a straight up breakdown to be pure single target. And I know for a fact that pure fish is only going to be there, right? Similar to how Runmei, she will never really be completely bricked up as long as you can run an A-box shadows. Whether or not she's the best in store for other teams is not going to be as consequential. But the thing is, the gap between a E0 and E1 Tribbie is way bigger than the gap between a E0 and E1 Runmei. So for this particular sentiment over here, I think if the list allowed for an E1, then E1 Tribbie would just be the greatest pool of all time. If you can allow it. But if you don't allow it, that is gonna be way, way, way more difficult to say. Because at the end of the day, one cost is one cost and two costs is two costs, right? So that's my 2 cents on whether or not Tribbie should be the best value over here. Because at the end of the day, when Cyrene came out, Sunday kind of got homeless. And when all of the niche support started popping up, Tribbie is slowly starting to get homeless. Then going to version 4, she's going to become like even less and less of relevance, especially at E0. Which brings me to my final topic. Best pool value of today and best pool value in history. I think best pool value of today, I frankly think Hyacinth is not that big of an importance because we have a free DHPT. And when version 4 rolls around, if you can chill for that little bit more running any of your other sustains, you are probably going to be able to get through. That unfortunately changes if you are going to be a Remembrance flagship user. And if you do a Remembrance flagship, then there really just is no other close alternative. And you just kind of just run this, right? And because of like how popular Remembrance flagship actually is, I think Hyacinth can just be there purely by like the number of usage rate. If Remembrance flagship was not as popular, right? Like if Remembrance flagship was as popular as Final flagship, then I think Hyacinth can honestly not be here. And I'll probably give this to... I wish I can give it to E1 Tribbie, but I can't. So I probably might actually just give it a Sunday, and then we'll just see how the list is gonna be cooking up. At least for a definitive fact in history right now, E0 Ramen is definitely up there, right? E0 Ramen is definitely. I don't think there's really any other E0 that has aged this long for this amount of meta relevancy. By E1, I might consider seeing how version 4 will change, because I don't really know if E1 Ramen is gonna be that big of a deal. And what if they kill Super Break again? Which is why it's definitely not gonna be Dahlia, it's definitely not gonna be Fuel, or like any of those niche things, because too many changes can happen in HSR's endgame content, right? So this is okay, and then this one, purely by popularity, I think it is also going to be okay. I do want to give a special shout out if you are a DOT main. Kafka is pretty much just non-negotiable, right? Unless you are Serra, which hates Kafka, so just pull Cyberity, that's going to be there. Let me know what you guys think in this comments below. The best pool value, or what is the thing? The best pool worth, right? The best worth in terms of HSR history. Yo, as an Akirono.
I do care for Eidolon, but the type of Eidolon matter. Most of it is E2 Phantom / Theft stuff where they get extra turn compared to E1T, which is more of number-based improvement.
I will be very surprised if casuals start caring about E2 DPS though. Okay, honestly, I have no idea what a casual base is like. Because the reason why I say casuals don't care about Eidolon, I remember when I pulled the E2 casuals for my free-to-play account. Oh my god, they flipped, bro. The free-to-plays, the casuals, bro, they were like so angry. You cannot activate that E2 casual. You fucking activate it, you're done, right? So like, I just think to myself, like, most people just don't care about E2s, even if you're free to play. So I gotta ever do. Anyways, let me wrap up this video right here. So this okay, this okay. I'll change it to Sunday. This is fine, and I'll just remove a night completely. If I have to remove one of these units here, I'll remove Bobbin. I'll keep Sunday. So that's my list. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Who is the best pool value in terms of respective time banners? Word of the day is gonna be Serra's Rage Bait War W. Join this, join this. Use code POKE for 10% of gamer subs. All the best. For you guys, see you guys next time. Bye.